Hello and welcome to this video on the Future Sound Systems MTX8 Pin Matrix router overdriving Tubescreamer style preamp. Let's check out what's to come. So up front, I'd like to thank Future Sound Systems for sponsoring this video. Now the MTX8 is dry wipeable and comes with a pen, which is super handy. It's an 8 input, 8 output pin matrix where we use 2mm banana pin connectors, and it comes with some to route signals from its inputs to its outs. Now we can parity mix, which is equal or even level mixing, by stacking multiple inputs to an output. We can create feedback loops. We can route modulation, clocks, triggers, audio, line level, bits of modular, guitar, and there's a version that has a Tubescreamer style preamp where input 1 will feed a clean or clipping stage, tons of level, aggressive tonal control, and tons of gain. There's about a 3 dB roll off from 200 Hz, which kind of tightens up that bottom end. It's very similar to a Tubescreamer. There's lots of ways to use the MTX8, as we'll see in the video. So the timing index is on screen, you can skip around in the description. Without further ado, let's get into it. So here's a patch making use of course, signal routing in the MTX8, but also feedback and a bit of colour from that preamp. My signal is a loop from blooper, comes into 1, so it's coloured by the preamp on the way in, out of A to count to 5, back to 2, which comes out of B to my PT delay back into input 3, which comes out of C there into my modular system. Removing these pins will remove my feedback loop, which we'll talk about shortly, and I could simply just reroute the routing moving the pins. So instead of blooper count to 5 PT delay, now I'm going blooper into PT delay with count to 5 right at the end. As you can tell there, it cuts all the sound out to its wet sound right at the end of the chain into the modular. But moving back to what I preferred, blooper, count to 5, PT delay, let's add this feedback loop. The PT delay is the last thing in the chain, coming out of C to my modular, but let's also take it to D, which comes to this passive tone and volume controller I'm going to use to control and manually play the feedback loop we're going to create. This comes back in to 4. So now this will route back out through A, giving us this mixed output of bloopers input here, but then also the output of this chain back in to count to 5, which will therefore go back round the loop. As I turn this up, you can hear all this nice treble, high frequency feedback. A little bit crunchy, and I turned it up a bit too far there. As with any kind of feedback loop, you've of course got to be careful. It's a lovely thing to be able to reroute what could be a pedalboard or a synth or studio setup. Also creating feedback loops. Which creates kind of glistening ambient noise through this patch that I've got set up. So here we'll take a look at the sound of the preamp on this version of the MTX8 with a synth. So Moleco Manfa coming in, clipping is on, diming the gain up full, and a little bit of a tonal boost. So this is coming into input 2 here. And with the routing on the pin matrix, I'm just recording the synth dry through. There's no preamp or tone colouring from input 2 onwards. Back to input 1 with this preamp, and we can still control the gain and the tone even with the clipping off. Let's get that clipping back on. And I do run synths through distortion pedals, and this having that Tubescreamer vibe to the clipping and the preamp works really well. Now the MTX8 isn't just for audio routing, we can use it for modulation. Have 4 inputs, using 5 to 8 this time. It's a simple patch with a wavetable oscillator going into a filter. If I say let my 16th note envelope go to the filter there on B, you can hear the effect of that 16th note envelope. Now I could use the quarter note. I could mix both envelopes together, and mixing modulation is always a great thing in Modular. Taking a look at the LFOs, it could be that LFO, or the even slower one that feeds the filter. But opening up my filter, let's say the effects of these on the wavetable oscillator. That LFO works nicely, as does the slower one, but we can mix these LFOs to control the wavetable. And simply mixing 2 simple LFOs, this now feels like more complex modulation. Closing down my filter. The mixing and merging of these 2 LFOs makes this feel like a longer evolving tonal palette. Let's add quarter note envelope to the filter 2 for some accents. So here I'm going to explore series and parallel routings, and doing that in stereo too. Here's a ridiculous setup of 4 tape delays, a WEM, a Sims, a space echo, and an echoplex. This is mechanically very noisy, so let me mute the audio and shut up for a second. I'll try my best to cut around the mechanical noise, but to show you what's going on in this patch, on the left hand side, input 2, my modular patch, goes across and feeds output E, which is my WEM delay, that goes into the Sims in series, and then that's what's coming back on the left hand side. On the right hand side, a completely separate parallel chain, I'm also taking my modular patch, coming into the space echo, then out to the echoplex, and then from the echoplex back. So I have these 2 in series on the left, and these 2 in series on the right. I could also route some dry sound in, say to both sides, by splitting that input to my output there, A and B, which is left and right. And that does just help clean up this noisy mass of tape delay. So let's break this down and go through series and parallel routings. This is my input routed to both A and B. And if I just wanted to go to any one of 4 tape delays, I would route to its output. Let's say the space echo there on G. And then I could bring back my space echo into the mix on one or both sides. If I wanted separate chains on each side, so running in parallel, I could say run to the space echo and to the echoplex, and take these to different sides. Gives me a nice stereo image. I could simply just run through entirely in series, and let's do that fully wet so we can really embrace this tape sound. So this is all 4 in series, and then the same sound to both sides. Input 2 goes to the WEM, comes back to the Sims, to the space echo, to the EP3, in series, all through each other. And again, because I can mix on this thing as well, we could cut through that dirt and dirge with some dry sound. So this is a fully parallel mix where my input feeds all 4 outputs, all 4 tape machines separately, and then all 4 ins come back to both the left and the right sides. I could build a stereo image by simply taking some of them out of the left and right sides. And as well as the blend that I had there, I've routed some of the tape machines back to each other. More noise, more filth, bit of feedback. All round good fun. So here's some utter filth from the Brunswick into the MTX8. Now Brunswick is pretty filthy anyway, but let's just crank the gain right up. And it's lovely and full on. I've not even switched in the clipping stage, this is just this high gain preamp circuit, really driving the already filthy Brunswick in some lovely distortion. So let's check out this preamp and Tubescreamer style overdrive with a guitar into an amp. Here it is now going through channel 2 of the MTX, just a clean pass through with no tonal change. And then into that input on clean on channel 1. We've still got some gain, some saturation and that aggressive tone shaping. And then kicking in the clipping and a bit more level. Get that nice Tubescreamer-esque overdrive pedal sound. So using the MTX8 for modulation worked really well instead of audio. But we can use it for gates and triggers too. So here using the Eloquencer, you can just see dancing around. I'm feeding in these gate rhythms, what I'm calling rhythms 1 to 4 on inputs 5 through 8. And then I'm feeding a snare, closed hat, open hat and rim shot on outputs A through D. Kick and snare is kind of my backing beat. And let's check these rhythms out just on the snare. Just some relatively simple rhythms. So I could choose which one is getting what. Maybe I want to accent this open hi-hat with a rim shot playing the same rhythm. Unique rhythm to the snare. And I'll feed it rhythm 4 as well. Again, mixing rhythms. So here's another patch with a feedback loop. Again, just a simple example of how to build one and how to control one. This time using the preamp for some lovely character and saturation in the feedback loop itself. Now removing my dry sound. I'm going to push this preamp a little bit. We just sat in this lovely saturated feedback. Now I'll pull this patch and start from the beginning. So to get a simple pass through of my dry sound to my mixer, I'm coming into channel 2, coming out of A. So simply 2 to A is my dry sound. Output B feeds this delay. So I'm going to send input 2 to B. This comes back in on channel 3. So if I put 3 to feed A, that will feed through to my output, mixing with the dry sound above it. Now with this coming back on input 3, I want to feed C, which is going back into the preamp. This single cable is coming back round and providing the feedback loop. So I'm sending to C, And let's send input 1 back out to this delay on B. Now I've got the level control on this preamp, so if I bring that up, it's nice to use the preamp for some colour, so let's balance this feedback loop, add some gain. I'm going to really dull this down with the tone. You get some really lovely saturated, haunting feedback with the actual preamp itself. Now if I back the gain off, open up the tone, add some level, we get some still very characterful tape-like feedback around this delay, but it's much cleaner. So actually having the preamp as your tonal colour, your feedback colour, it's a really beautiful way to work with the MTX, feeding it back into the preamp to create this feedback loop. So that's it for this video on the Future Sound Systems MTX8. Do check out demos of other Future Sound Systems products linked in the description. And you can join my growing community and Discord channel over at patreon.com/DivKid. Hit like, leave a comment, and I'll see you next time. Cheers!